Hi, everyone. Welcome to Next to Media. I'm Mike Shields. I'm here with Patrick Courtney. He's the Chief Business Officer of Fuse Media. Hey, Patrick. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm pumped to talk to you because you're in an interesting spot right now, and I know enough about the company to be dangerous, but I feel like it's been around for a while, and I wonder if some of my listeners are in the same boat. So just catch us up on like what Fuse Media is, what you do there. We'll get into what's going on in the business.
Yeah. Well, Fuse Media has had many lives over the past 20 years. So, what you might have known Fuse Media to be may be different today. So I think It's good to go over it. Fuse, we're the global leader of inclusive entertainment. So we're a diverse-owned company. We're Latino-owned. We reach a multicultural audience across 2 traditional linear networks, 7 owned and operated fast channels, a subscription service, and digital and social. As Chief Business Officer, my job is to kind of support the growth and the evolution of our business as it kind of navigates this rapidly changing environment.
So that's a lot of stuff. I want to get into it a little bit. So who is your target? I think people might be surprised. Some of what you just said there. Wait, cable, this audience, does that make sense? But then you're expanding into so many areas. So give us your target and maybe like talk about your programming and the landscape for this audience that we traditionally think of.
Yeah. So our audience definitely, broadly speaking, it's a young multicultural audience in 18 to 34. And of course, that differs by distribution medium, right? So pay TV tends to be a little bit older. Fast is, we're still figuring out exactly what the audience is for fast, as that's a growing and nascent environment. And then our Fuse Plus audience being a little bit different. But even within fast, we have channels like Shades of Black, Latino Vibes, El Rey Rebel, Out TV Proud, our Culture Collective partners. We really are truly kind of have a diverse representation of our content across all platforms, which is what makes us a little bit different. As a diverse-owned company, we aren't reaching one segment of any one particular community. We reach a broad multicultural audience that is a younger one.
Right. How would you, it's probably hard to summarize that many different channels and outlets, but is there a thread between, if you compare yourselves to the established multicultural media, particularly television, are you, just younger, more diverse? Is there a different programming angle that colors everything throughout, or does it really depend?
It definitely depends. I think what works on, say, traditional linear versus what works on fast versus what works in subscription. I mean, it's different programming strategies, right? And so, it's difficult. It's been a challenge for, I think, many media companies to have this sort of like yes and philosophy. Yes, we're in pay TV, and we're in fast, and we're in subscription, and we're across digital and social. And so our programming strategy has had to adapt to those environments. And so how we program our pay TV linear network is definitely different than how we program our 7 fast channels or our subscription service. And that's been, it's been one of the key challenges that we're still figuring it out. I think a lot of media companies are still figuring that out. And then figuring out how do we design our organization around servicing all those different aspects. And so, we've had to look at our programming and scheduling team and see how they can service pay TV as well as fast. And our ad sales team could sell across all these different mediums. I mean, it's been, I've been at the company for 7 years, and we're still in the middle of understanding exactly where this is all going and how we're going to continue to adapt to it.
Do you give us a couple examples of like stuff it's really early in this evolution you talked about, things that have worked maybe that were different than, like, for example, in your fast strategy, a lot of fasts, generally speaking, have been like, let's put a bunch of old shows together that we own and put out a lineup and make life pretty easy. How did you approach, programming that versus what you were doing in television and how to maybe carve out a real brand there in such a crowded area?
Fast is increasingly crowded. I think there's a number of things going on the technology side to kind of help, create a better user experience. Things like personalization or machine learning to show you recommended channels that you may watch more and things like that. But we have always taken the position that strong multi-content channel brands will have a really important place within fast, just as they have in traditional linear for decades. What works is it's it's changed over the years. It started with, a lot of just sort of stringing together whatever programming you had and throwing that up. And that's what we initially started with 7 years ago. We had a channel called Fuse XL, and it's just like whatever we had lying around was stringing it together to seeing what was going on. But pretty quickly, like right around, at the pandemic, when things really started to take off for free streaming TV, we started to know like, well, how we schedule this, how we program this actually matters to how the audience shows up and how they watch. Yeah. So that's when we took the discipline that we had on programming and scheduling in our pay TV linear and started to apply those same techniques into FAST. And we've seen enormous growth. We have several case studies in which we've taken a channel and then applied what we do best on that and seen exponential growth, simply because of how you day part things, how you schedule the programming. But I will say that like FAST still primarily is a place where people go to find things that are familiar, right? It's to go to binge watch series or to watch studio titles that they've seen. And I don't think, anybody's quite cracked original, like new programming when it comes to general entertainment in FAST. And that's partly because the audience is showing up for a specific thing.
The expectations are a little different. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that there's efforts that are being made on the platform side, on the programmer side to figure out, okay, how can you make, if you how do you make original programming work and what would that look like? But I still think that's like a work in progress on FAST.
So this is a multi-part question, I guess, probably hard to answer, but what's your biggest challenge with FAST? I'm kind of fascinated by this. Is it discovery? Is it trying to figure out, the measurement isn't traditional, or it's you're playing in someone else's house, so to speak, where you don't have total control of the numbers and the distribution. What's your biggest challenge there? Maybe how have you guys worked around those things?
The challenges are many.
It's a good question when you get a big sigh like that, I feel.
Well, we love challenges here at FuseSpeak. Yeah, we're no stranger to tackling challenges. I think there are several. One, and I think this has been talked about quite a bit, is that there is a sort of a limited amount of information, data that's coming through as far as the content, the performance of the channels, and what's working, who's watching it, that kind of thing. And I think there's a lot of talk about, how can we work better together so that we're able to start to measure these things and start to be a little bit more actionable on how we can all, really achieve the potential that FAST has by programmers understanding their audiences and what's working there. So I think that's been an ongoing challenge. And when you're talking about all these different FAST platforms that you're distributing to, and they all have their different priorities and the way that they want to do FAST based on their ecosystems, it creates a little bit of it's a challenging environment.
It's not like you had a bunch of different cable companies, but the MTV was the same in every one. Like it's the presentation and then all the delivery is really different in a lot of these guys.
Right. Yeah. Like how they organize their EPGs and how they're thinking about FAST in relationship to other aspects of their services, their platforms, and where they're pushing people to and things like that. Like you have to have a lot of those different considerations. And whether it's an opt-in platform or just sort of a native type of platform, because there's S&P standards across these different things. So there's a lot of like configurations in FAST across these different platforms. There's not a ton of standardization on that. And then not having the data also to be able to inform how we should be doing this. We've had to do a lot of sort of like directional types of analyses and seeing how this stuff works. And we're doing, it's going fine, but I think there's a lot more work to be done. And I think on the other side is like the ad sales market is rapidly changing. And
that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, that's been a challenge. We've been fortunate that we have we've been selling traditional linear television for 20 years, and we were very early and fast. We started in 2018, and we started, organizing ourselves and evolving ourselves to be able to sell CTV right alongside our traditional linear. And that's where we've been successful up to this point. And we've been historically oversold across all of our owned and operated on CTV. And we launched our Culture Collective, which we can talk about, but I think that now we're starting to look at, okay, well, things are starting to move, starting to go more automated. There's a lot more programmatic. That's how CTV is being transacted. How do you adapt to these things when there's less of a a need for brands and advertisers to commit budgets in and upfront, and you're looking at a much more sort of like programmatic business. It's looking a little bit more like what like digital media has looked like. And then how do you play in that space? Also, when you've got all of these big walled gardens that are coming in and sucking out ad dollars from the market, and so again, it's a challenge, but we've seen like incredible growth on FAST when it comes to our ad sales business, and we're still very excited about it. It's just not without its challenges.
All right, I'm going to come back to the programmatic side of things, but I wonder for traditionally, you said Fuse has had many lives and it's changed over time. One of the things you hear about in the multicultural space, the complaint of maybe getting stuck in a bucket, like, oh, well, the minority agency handles that, or that's only for certain budgets. You can't compete for everything. Has that, given what's gone on over the past couple of years, have you seen that evolve? Is it still a challenge you face?
I think it's again, it's kind of like it's not really an and or. It's just like we're looking at budgets from both areas.
Yeah,
being a diverse-owned media company, of course, we look at how do we capture budgets that are allocated for diverse-owned media specifically. I mean, when you look at the demographic that we specialize in, that 18 to 34, I mean, the majority is multicultural, right?
Yeah.
Like multicultural is a general market. And so
right.
I think we're starting to see an evolution on the buying side too, that's responding to that. And so we're continuing to figure out what is the best go-to-market strategy in order to present that. But we think that the audience that we reach, which is it's at scale across these different platforms, a young multicultural audience, is an audience that has tremendous buying power and is something that general advertisers are looking to reach.
Right. Now, getting back to you're talking about it, like the embracing of programmatic channels, whether you're using direct marketplaces or SSPs, you're putting your inventory out for everybody to buy. A lot of big media companies have sort of gone that direction, but kept it at arm's length or wanting to have a lot of control. It sounds like you've gone all the way. That sounds racy, but it sounds like you've been fearless when it comes to programmatic stuff. Can you maybe talk about if I have that right and why that might be?
Well, I think more automation, more programmatic decisioning. I mean, that is just sort of like a natural evolution of the ad sales business as becomes more and more of that is happening in streaming environments. We look at digital media quite closely as like, here's what, here's a playbook for what we're likely going to start to see across CTV and how this is gonna evolve. I think for us, we've just had a very strong, even within programmatic, we're talking about direct, right? Like, a lot of cases, right?
Yeah.
We have a very strong programmatic direct business. We do very little open marketplace. And I think because of the strength of the ad sales that we've had, and we're in an environment where there's a lot of fast programmers who aren't selling very much of their inventory. They're seeing CPMs that are starting to go down. Their fill rates are pretty low, and they're starting to see that like maybe the economics here aren't quite as good as they thought they might be.
Interesting.
And so they're looking for solutions on that. And so we've built our own with Culture Collective to allow.
So what is that? That was my next question. What is the Culture Collective and why?
Yeah, so Culture Collective is a group of partnerships that we've established with Lionsgate, Trusted Media, and Tastemade. We started this a little over a year ago now, where as we've been sort of sold out across our own and operated, we looked at, okay, how can we continue to build on the product, the ad solution that we have, which is reaching multicultural audiences across CTV in this case, and seeing, are there other partners that would be a good fit that we could try to put together and curate a differentiated supply of inventory that could be bought contextually across very premium programming. And that was, so our first stop was Lionsgate. We've had a great relationship with that group for a while, and they've been leaned in on FAST for some years now. Yeah. They've been kind of a first mover in a lot of these spaces when it comes to their ilk, and they have channels like Ebony TV and Hearst Fair and in single series like Are We There Yet? And that fits very well within our positioning with Culture Collective, reaching that multicultural 18 to 34 audience. And what, they're running series like Power on Ebony TV. So, right. This is really premium stuff. And then so we looked at that, we did that partnership with them, and then we brought in Trusted Media and Tastemade that also over-index on multicultural audiences to put together this type of solution, because we think, especially as it continues to go more automation, more programmatic buying, that scale is definitely an ingredient in how you're going to find success in that way. And so we've been successful to this point, and now we're figuring out, okay, as a group of partners here, what's the growth strategy? How do we continue to position ourselves? And then we at Fuse, we're also talking directly with the platforms who, I think what you're kind of alluding to, are kind of thinking like, okay, well, this is my inventory, and I don't want to give a lot of this out to other players, but being diverse owned media and reaching multicultural audience, we're very complementary. And so we've been fortunate to do deals directly with platforms like Roku, where we can help support their ad sales efforts and make more money for their programmers across the platforms.
Because I wonder, there's an argument to be made for why doesn't somebody roll up all this fast stuff and build out like a mega ad network? But that would probably perhaps be threatening to some of these partners where you are really doing something specialized. I wonder if that's something that helps you kind of have a little bit more of a receptive audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think like we definitely have positioned ourselves in a way where we think that it's a space where we can be effective and we can be complementary, so that we can build something that's sustainable, and that we think that we can work across platforms. And so far, we've been successful with that. So we're pretty encouraged, and we're going to keep building on what we've accomplished so far.
I know I've spent a lot of time on FAST, and we talked about your cable business. We kind of skipped past the fact that you have your standalone streaming service. That seems hard. We've seen the streaming wars have a lot of casualties. What have you found there that's working? How are you sort of surviving through this? And is it because you are serving an underserved audience? Like, what's going on there?
I mean, you'll hear us talking a lot about FAST because the advertising opportunity is there, right?
Yeah.
I think on the subscription side, we're talking, I think, was it today that New York Times article came out on the, like niche services?
Yes, it is. Shudder and others. Yes.
Yeah. But in that article, it says like they're getting millions of subscribers, but then they also cite how high the churn rates are and the hopscotching between services. And it makes for a difficult business. So when you're trying to create original programming to satisfy someone who's paying you on a monthly basis to get that access to that, and then you're splitting that potentially with resellers, if you're splitting that with Amazon or whoever, and you're trying to just not only acquire new subs, but then keep those subs when those churn rates are sometimes north of 50% on an annual basis, it makes for a really tough type of business. Our position on this is we've generally not looked at direct to consumer. We've looked at what are the reseller marketplaces and how are they going to evolve. And we think that some kind of rebundling type of package will ultimately be kind of the end point for a lot of these marketplaces. And that's where we're kind of leaning in, is we're figuring out, okay, how can we do that? How can we work with the platforms? In the same way we're doing FAST, is like, how can we kind of shape these things with platform partners and with programmers to figure out a solution that everybody can really feel like is economically sustainable?
Why do you think, this is a tough question to answer, but when it comes to multicultural, there's been a lot of attempts at launching a media company for, second generation Hispanics or African Americans online, or there's been a lot of attempts at startups to try and bring these worlds together. And there's been a lot of companies that just haven't worked. Why do you think about that? And what have you found here that maybe has gotten you through some of the challenges that those companies face?
I mean, it's hard to sort of like speculate on other companies and their, the challenges that they may or may not have had, and without identifying any of them specifically. I'll say like my background has been, prior to Fuse, was digital media, in which like almost 100% of the business was branded content. Yeah. And in these digital media environments where a lot of your media dollars are being sort of like brought in through these branded content programs, you tend to have sort of lower margin, lower sell-through rate types of campaigns. Tough to get repeat business. Yeah. It's tough. Yeah, exactly. There's every January 1st, you're starting from zero, and you got to build the whole thing again. And then when you do get these you secure these deals, there's a lot of costs involved to deliver on those, right? And the traffic isn't free. You got to go out and get it. So I think though that's partially why a lot of the sort of the digital media players in that space have been challenged at times. And I think like for us, given that we have owned and operated channels, we have a pay TV ecosystem, we have reliable viewership and distribution across these platforms that allows us to transact on media dollars with with a higher success rate and a little bit higher margin. That's been helpful and favorable to why we've been successful. But I also think that as we evolve and all this stuff continues to converge, the branded content piece, like and figuring out where you're going to get your distribution and your inventory, it's going to continue to be an important part of the conversation. We're also looking at how we build on those businesses. Can't be your only business. You have to diversify. Right.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it made me think of this. I wonder what would have happened if some of those the digital media boom, which with the pivot to video, if they had the fast option around, or if streaming was bigger, you might have seen some of those companies go in a different direction. Lastly, what do you see? This is hard to generalize again, but what do brands maybe not understand about the multicultural market right now, and the different constituencies? What do you hear a lot of that you maybe want to dispel or just help brands understand better?
I mean, as far as the multicultural market, I think there's, like specifically there are certain things like what I just said, like multicultural is general market. It is increasingly close to a majority of the population. When you cut that, it goes younger, the more multicultural you get. And that, like when we sell, like we have English language, Latino like El Rey Rebel and Latino Vibes are English language, but they're US Hispanic focused channels, and so we're working on the positioning for those, and it becomes this thing like on a platform or distribution side. They're like, well, we have our Spanish language. Where does this? But they're not Spanish language, so where does it go? And it becomes this like, how do you position this type of thing? How do you create these general life size channels that over index in particular community, but are also sort of mainstream popular channels? So there's that kind of piece. And on the ad sales side, it's kind of a similar, there's some similar challenges on that. But I also think that like fast is still, as much as it has grown, it is still a pretty nascent space. And completely. Even the term fast, like you walk in the door of like any random agency, and like half the people won't even know what that term means. Right.
I've never heard of this term. What are you talking about? Yeah,
exactly. Like there's still so much education. It's still so much maturity that needs to happen for us to be, I think, as effective as possible across that. And that's again why we think like it's not like a zero-sum game across fast. Like this is something where we can be helpful in educating the marketplace,
and you build the whole
along
thing
with our platform partners, so that everybody wins. And we think that's, like long term, it's important for us to, make sure that we have these healthy partnerships.
All right, Patrick, great stuff here. Super interesting conversation. Let's chat again.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.